well as faculty that teach here at Phoenix College. They recognize, as many of the people do, not only just the high quality, but the incredible people that teach here and that are willing to give their all to students and their learning careers. One of those people you'll be hearing tonight, and I think those of you who've known Dr. Wilson long enough know that if I were to read a list of all of his accomplishments, talking about his degrees and everything else, he would hate that very, very much. He made it very clear. But I just want to share a little story. I first met him at one of the Mexico trips to University of Guanajuato and Mexico City. And there we found ourselves in a way to be kindred spirits because we were so excited about the history of the region. And also, he and I had probably the lowest Spanish proficiency at the time. So we were placed in a class together. And both of us were coming from two very different parts of the city. But by the time we got there, and I think Mike will agree, we were both, there was a great little couple of places for coffee and the little chocolates that you could get there. By the time we got there, we were so hopped up on caffeine that I think the teacher was just about done teaching us Spanish after the second or third day. I mean, 2 full weeks, every morning, all morning long. So we ended up, I think, expanding our vocabulary by maybe 3 or 4 words, but we had a wonderful time. I've always found him, and as I've known many of you, to be an incredibly caring, thoughtful scholar who has given quite a lot to this community. He started working here in 1997. I was talking to one of the committee members, the student committee member, who was born in 1997. And I thought, that's an interesting perspective. So without further ado, please help me welcome Dr. Michael Wilson.
Thank you very much, Kenny, for that very nice introduction. And I'd also like to commend you for having the students, I see some of them now have been able to return, who were actually marking the directions, Dr. Wilson's talk in chalk on the ground outside on our lovely campus. And you know, I was hoping to leave my mark on Phoenix College, and it looks like, at least in that way, I have. But that was a fabulous introduction, Kenny. I really appreciate it. And Kenny is exactly right. It is where we got to know each other in Guanajuato. And that particular program, by the way, is sponsored by what, in my opinion, is one of the few good things coming out of the district office these days. I guess I'm allowed to say that. Or perhaps retirement might begin sooner than I planned. But I'm referring to, of course, the Office of Intercultural and International Education. Because, my friends, when you go on an exchange program to another country, not only are you exposed to that customs, the language, Kenny and I could have done better with the language, and the history of that country, you certainly get to know the people that you're on that exchange program with, and that's invaluable to get to know your colleagues in that way. And let me tell you something about Dr. Miller. He has a razor-sharp wit that can be absolutely devastating, and maybe that's why I didn't learn enough Spanish. I was laughing at his jokes too much. I'd like to also say that it's a real thrill to be speaking here in Sessions Hall, a place where I have heard so much good music from our music faculty, which of course is Dr. Miller, Kenny Miller, also Carl Schindler, Mila Shows, and their students, folks. The students will be, will impress you if you ever come to one of the concerts here. And Kenny, I think we have some at the end of the month coming up in here, if I'm not mistaken. Be on the lookout for the email about that, because here's what it's like, folks. You'll be, first of all, the acoustics are wonderful. It's a nice, small hall. And if, I'm a fan of jazz, I must say, and as I'm enjoying the jazz that I'm hearing, if I avert my glance away from the stage, I'm not kidding, you would swear that's Coltrane, that's Miles, or that's Thelonious. And then you look back and it's your students who could very well be taking your classes. And so to be on the same stage where I've heard that music is pretty a thrill to me. And don't worry, I am not musically inclined, so I will not even approach music, other than the fact I do appreciate it. Now, when I first arrived here, which was some time ago, as Kenny told you, the honors department was located where media services is today. And if you don't know, I'm sure you know where that is. It's always struck me as an unusual building, because it kind of looks like it's an annex of the bullpen or something. So obviously the Honors Hub is a much better location than their original spot. The Honors Coordinator, the person who was serving where Kenny is serving so ably now, was Barbara Van Sittert, who was a very good scholar and a good person, obviously. But she also made some local history, folks. Check this out. To my knowledge, Barbara Van Sittert is the first woman to be admitted into the dining room of the Phoenix Country Club, which made me respect her for, that was very big in my book, because to me, it's sort of hard to believe that any place these days would deny any group of people service. So she was a pathfinder, she shattered a barrier there, and that appeals to me. Anyway, shortly after I got here, in fact the year I got here, the new honors coordinator was a man named Alan Hoffa. And Alan I got to know very well, first of all, through something called New Faculty Orientation. Some of you old timers may remember we called it NFO. Of course today it's called FIRE, I think. And it really is a good way for new faculty to get acquainted with all the wonderful things that we have on our campus. And we have many wonderful things. Well, we're easily the best of the Maricopa colleges, hands down. Well, guess what? Speaking of foreign exchange, I actually was able to accompany Alan Hoffa on an exchange program to Hermosillo, Mexico, 10 years before I met Kenny in Guanajuato. And I'm very lucky in that I have a Mexican family in Guanajuato, a Mexican family in Hermosillo, and believe me, you can never have too many families, I don't think. I think that's a good idea. And also, as I said, I got to know Alan well on that trip, because that's what an exchange program does. I encourage all of you, if you can, it will change your life. It's that profound, folks. Now, soon after that, Honors was located in our Department of Liberal Arts, which I like our department, I like our quarters, but once again, the Honors Hub is a far better place for them, and I'm so happy we have a special place for honors now. But let me tell you a little bit about Alan Hoffa, the honors coordinator at that time. And this speaks volumes when I'm about to tell you this story. Alan took a pay cut, a reduction in salary, which is never easy for anyone, because his wife got a job in another state. And he, of course, accompanied her. Unfortunately, Alan's move maybe didn't work out as well as he had hoped. The last I heard, he was serving on the City Council of Monterey, California. Nice work if you can get it, folks. If you've ever seen what the countryside looks around, what it looks like around Monterey, it's absolutely beautiful. And so I think that's called landing on your feet, except you are involved in politics, so I guess that maybe balances things out. Now, and by the way, nobody should be surprised I'm giving you sort of a history of honors. I mean, I'm sorry, that's my shtick. as is this, right? I hope nobody was expecting Powerless Point, as I call it. Handwritten notes, and it's scratch paper even, so go green. It is, and we had, in fact, it was, we had our green Earth Day, not Green Day. Green Day is a great rock group. Little Freudian slip there, huh? Anyway, Al was succeeded by Marion Gibney. And Marion brought a more relaxed style of leadership to honors that was nice to work under, even if we did need an interpreter to translate some of the things Marion told us. Because if anybody remembers Marion, she had a unique way of expressing herself, to put it mildly. Excuse me while I take a drink. Oh, nice and cold. Thank you, Penny. And by the way, speaking of Marion Gibney, I think it's really cool that her son, Bob, currently teaches honors. So he's carrying on the Gibney legacy with the honors department. And those of you who know about Phoenix College, you know about the fabulous work that Bob has done with the Phoenix College Pantry, helping our students in need, because folks, there are more of our students who need help feeding themselves than you would ever guess. And of course, Bob is ably assisted by Eric Berg, and oh yeah, Eric teaches honors too. These are the kind of people you are with when you teach honors. People like Elena, who work on Earth Day out there in the hot sun with her garden club. That's what I'm talking about. Now, when I began here long ago, before that student was born, and it is a very strange situation. I'll sometimes make a reference in my classes to something, and then I realize, you fool, that was 10, 15 years before they were even born, you know. I'm learning. But anyway, when I began teaching honors, the Arizona state government recognized the importance of the Maricopa community colleges, and they provided generous funding for us. And it allowed us to do so many more things that we cannot do now. And Kenny, I know it's got to be much tougher, because you are definitely, your hands are tied by the lack of funding. We all have experienced that. Because slowly, surely, over the years, that funding was reduced until a few years ago, gone. Zero. Zilch. Nada. Folks, I'm talking about the largest community college district in the state, the largest provider of workforce development. That means jobs, by the way. We do not get a single penny from our generous state government. I'll come back to this in a few moments. I think right now I need to take a deep breath, calm down, and talk about something a little more pleasant, like my honors colleagues. Anyway, an example of what we could do with funding, my friends, was this. The honors department would take a group of students on trips to some of the greatest cities in the United States. And these trips, most of them took place when Liz O'Brien was the honors coordinator, because she succeeded Marion Gibney. And Liz brought, well, let me put it this way, she left her own indelible mark on honors that she did with everything else that she did in her time at this campus. A truly remarkable person. And in fact, the Honors Convocation is now such a fabulous event, largely due to Liz's efforts. And Kenny, that's coming up April 26th?
May 4th.
What now?
May 3rd.
May 3rd. Dr. Wilson's grading a lot now, and sorry, the historian's a little weak on dates. Wait a minute, that doesn't sound right either, does it? Oh well. But, folks, I encourage you to go to that. That, of course, will be in the John Paul Theater Yet another fabulous venue we have on this campus. Folks, we as a two-year institution have better venues than some four-year schools, I think. And of course, the one we're sitting in the John Paul, is what I'm thinking of in particular. But anyway, I was fortunate enough to go on 2 of these honors trips. The first one was in Washington, D.C. And there, Patty Finkenstadt, who, by the way, earned her PhD at nearby Johns Hopkins University, she took Diane Miller and myself to this unbelievable Moroccan restaurant in Washington, D.C. And quite frankly, folks, I'll never forget it because the food, the atmosphere, ambiance, whatever, the company of my colleagues, it was surely a priceless event. And speaking of Diane, not only did I get to know her in Washington, D.C., I also got to know her further the next year when we took honor students to Chicago. Talk about good jazz there. Yeah, I can still remember a nice little club that Dr. Wilson maybe spent too much time in. But as I said, I really want to encourage you, if you can, to, if you ever, those of you who are faculty, take students on somewhere, you get to know your colleagues very well. Because let me say this, you can think you know someone, but you really find out who and what a person is about when you travel with them. Because that is, well, I think some of you know what I'm talking about. Now, as I keep telling you, what's made my time with honors so rewarding are the fabulous instructors that I have had the honor and privilege of serving with. I kid you not, my friends, I have been at some honors faculty meetings where I kind of pause and look around the room and I see the other faculty in that room and I think to myself, what am I doing in the same room with these gifted people? I am so fortunate to have done this for so many years. And I've already, saluted some of our instructors. And let me tell you this, folks, the energy that Kenny brings not only to his singing, to his Grammy Award-winning ensemble is incredible. I've already noted the important contributions of Bob and Eric with the Phoenix Pantry Club. And even within my own department of liberal arts, Miles DeCoster has already made a name for himself in the short time that he has been here. That man has given more brown bag lectures for the honors department than many of us who have been here for a longer period of time. And his fascinating talks, well, they've been over such diverse topics as the ethical treatment of animals. They've stretched from the ethical treatment of animals all the way to the quality of the food we eat. Important topics. And he's brought his knowledge and wisdom to those topics. Speaking of food, I want to thank you for skipping your supper to be here tonight. Of course, for Dr. Wilson, who's been evening coordinator for many years, 5 o'clock means work. And so this is actually a nice change of pace for me to not be working in my office, but to be sharing my time with you fine people. But speaking of food, as I was saying, the Food Day event has really evolved into another enjoyable experience, largely due to the work of Liz O'Brien in that area. But folks, there is one honors instructor in particular that has really influenced and inspired me in my many years here at Phoenix College. I have worked with this gifted scholar for all 20 years I've been here. 17 of those 20 years, that man has been my chair. Yet, he is far more my colleague, my friend, than he is my boss. Albert Celoza is the epitome of lifelong learning. When I got here, not only did he have his PhD, obviously, he's Dr. Celoza, he had three, count them, three master's degrees to go along with his PhD. Most of us PhDs, one master's. And he hasn't rested. Since that time, he has added at least 2 BAs, probably more, besides supervising a very diverse group of faculty that is the liberal arts department. To my knowledge, no other department has as many prefixes or subjects as we have, 26, 20-something. And believe me, that means that many different faculty, and they're as diverse as the subjects they teach, stretching from economics to political science to philosophy, and oh yeah, history. Albert just returned from California, where his hard work with the Phoenix College Model United Nations team resulted in even more accolades for the latest group of students who have benefited from his mentoring. But I must say, it is in my numerous conversations with Dr. Celoza that my admiration and respect for him has grown. Now, not surprisingly, those conversations often centered on teaching. And it was in these conversations about teaching that I recognized his commitment to his students and his wishes for to help them succeed in whatever way they can be to be the best that they can. He's truly devoted to them. In other words, teaching comes first. It is certainly the reason why I spent so many years in grad school. Seems like almost as many years as I've been here. It wasn't that long, but I finally folded and got the PhD. But that's why I went to be a teacher. And that's something that all of us faculty should never lose sight of. Teaching is why we are here. Oh, by the way, I have not